Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Thomas Lee and welcome to my recorded presentation based on the assignment, curriculum and methods. So, as you can see from this presentation, it has the following: my description of what 21st century teaching and learning means, why my own reflections and my thoughts based on the academic literatures have suggested, what ways has the 21st century teaching and learning have shaped our own society, and where are we embarking towards, and what have we scaffolded in terms of aligning how we should teach, what are the best teaching practices and protocols implemented to future emerging educators, current emerging educators, and future emerging educators like us, as stated previously. In addition to this presentation, there will be discussion and analysis of the Australian educational context, in particular the general requirements of the Australian Victorian curriculum and necessary for Australian professional teaching standards, ATSL standards. As I stated, there will be reflections on my own reflections as to how the ATSL standard is an integral part of building teachers' responsibilities and to us as future educators, and what role do they have in our education society. Moreover, there will be general requirements of the Australian Victorian curriculum based on my own disciplinary subject, Japanese. What specific general requirements have scaffolded, and what implementations, expectations, and what core pedagogical references have I discussed, analysed, and have demonstrated within this presentation to demonstrate my understanding how does the general requirements, or also known as the general capabilities, have implemented, scaffolded, to relate and develop content knowledge, understanding, and skills of each of those general requirements within my disciplinary subject, as previously said, Japanese. To conclude this presentation, there will be a demonstration of the ATSL Standard 2.1, Professional Knowledge, where it asks students to attach a table that links their professional knowledge and learning. To conclude this presentation, there will be my own curriculum content knowledge outlined in my discipline method, which is Japanese, and how have I demonstrated my own understanding the curriculum frameworks, both explicitly or implicitly. How do I have demonstrated my own understanding, and what implications, what applications I have illustrated to document my own understandings of teaching the disciplinary subject Japanese. With that introduction out of the way, I will now explain my own description of the 21st century learning. So, the 21st century learning and teaching is the next generation, or also known as the cornerstone, to immerse young leaders, especially future students in the secondary education sector, into a technologically advanced global society. A society where we're becoming very diverse and having cross-cultural implications pervading in our own society. Not just us emerging to a globally oriented society, technological aspects such as emerging usage of ICT, they're showing the ability to communicate as a team, collaborate with others, with colleagues, communicating effectively. All of these skills are in demand for our 21st century. In what aspect? Well, in the competitive job markets and the requirements, has outlined the skills needed in order to get into the competitive job markets. So, as stated in this presentation, or I have written in my own transcript, that in this essay, there will be literatures and many researchers across many scholars will be in relation to the 21st century learning as to how the teaching methodologies and approaches to the Australian educational context, what have we examined, and what have they explained to make us realise the importance of the curriculum frameworks. So, to me personally, the 21st century teaching learning is beginning to diverge into the digital age, an age where digital means such as the use of personal computers, the use of different aspects of ICT projections, different softwares application use of apps through tablets. School now these days in the 21st century, we have witnessed that technology is being embraced by implementing laptop programs or computer facilities within the school policies, where both students and teachers can effectively use them in classrooms to conduct research projects, to use them in aid to create astounding visual visual aids to enhance students' learning. By building on these perspectives, we see that there is a development or building blocks of higher order thinking skills. For example, evaluating and critically thinking as to how what the students have researched, and communicate their own ideas to develop deeper learning opportunities that makes them be well informed and have an understand and grasp the absolute sense of what is it that they're learning in class and how can they apply it into the world they're living and the world they are accommodating in. So, to discuss the role of information, computer, and technology, ICT, embedded 21st century learning, what capabilities it has capabilities embedded into classrooms to boost curriculum frameworks. Well, academic literatures have suggested, especially target 2014, it encircles a learning ecosystem, meaning that it is the fundamental core of conveying different parallels to unite and communicate ideas that will create a systematic and collaborative learning system. So we see students get into groups, each person of different ethnic race or different thinking and knowledge, different understandings, collaborate together, get together and discuss their findings of what they have learned and what content have they captured, especially in this word here, capture content, for learners such as those in the secondary schooling field, that they discuss and share content, create content for everyone to see, depict, and learn together as a team. They could present materials varying from different visual formats to accommodate different learner styles, or people to immerse different information and their own findings based on the research project or the research task they have been directed or instructed by the teacher. So we could see applications such as quizzes, polls, or any other academic softwares to signal revision points, meaning that what ways can we revise students, what ways can we implement students' learning to provide feedback or showing their own learning continuum based on what they are seeing, and what ideas can they bring to class or share to class based on what they have learnt, based on the content they have scaffolded within the class. So, to me personally, I strongly believe that the emergence of ICT has provided teachers with a tool belt, several tools to differentiate personal learning. It provides growth to see that students can work on their own pace with the materials and the tools they've given to combat different varying complexities. As stated, that through cooperation, sharing, reflection, publishing, students' thoughts, developing and learning through resources of participants in a wide educational context, we see that these tools will flourish within the curriculum frameworks. It's a tool that will aid curriculum frameworks or general capabilities of literacy, numeracy, and critical thinking, which we'll divert later in this presentation, to induce no knowledge into class, which areas are applicable and congenial to open wide new areas of learning. So, within the customized learning experiences to be created, especially in Cengage Learning Australia 2015, it suggests that teachers are strongly suggesting ways to improve integrated and individualized learning plans to support students with varying cognitive abilities. So 21st century learners now these days have strongly suggested that the growing cognitive competencies, especially from the 4 C's, include critical thinking, as suggested before, I've stated before previously, for me myself in particular. The 4 C's are defined as critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity. These four key cornerstones, the key skills, are important for the 21st century learning. Critical thinking, how do I, as the students in particular, diverge and unpack different information or the question being presented? What ways can they answer the question based on their own beliefs, based on the evidence they've collected, and what analysis can they bring to the table or to the class in particular about their own findings based on the question given to class. But based on their findings, students need to demonstrate their own ability to communicate the information being presented, to talk about, discuss, analyze, evaluate their own findings in a clear, effective manner so that students can understand their own learning, and teachers as well scaffolding their own use of communication skills to combat different collaborative and creative academic content, which goes through collaboration with the class and the teacher. Is a two-way stream where teachers and students in particular are scaffolding different ideas to combat different learning measures based on the content of learning in class in the creativity in the most creative manner, seeing students to unpack, think outside the box of what and how they could answer and tackle the question being presented in class. And to complement that, the TPAC module has been created to integrate this use of the 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity. So TPAC module, sourced from this website here, educational researchers from Misha and Kogler, they have the idea that this content knowledge being taught in class and the pedagogical usages teachers intend to use in a classroom will upgrade students' learning with the use of technology. As you can see from this Venn diagram here, you see that there's technological knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, content knowledge intertwined together to show the forces running in, the 3 major factors running in, pervading in together to provide an instructive approach in integrating technology to enhance specific supporting students' learning experience and their own supporting needs. So this module, as you can see here, this enables students learning to exhibit what they know, exhibit learning and unpacking their own learning experiences through collaborating with other students, building practical oracy skills, the ability to show their own communication skills. Whenever students discuss their own learnings through the use of ICT, they could present their own PowerPoint presentation and discuss whatever they're learning in class, and through the presentation, unpacking essential and complex theories in a timely manner. So we see that the use of ICT and the growth of TPAC combined together, teachers today are bombarded or are surrounded with innovative policies and positions that will over time grant existential opportunities to reposition the education shifts to combat the conceptual frameworks of 21st century industry and what the 21st century industrialization is demanding future generations to combat different skills where the 21st century will present in any case. So therefore, providing students with technology, not just technology, but 21st century skills of the 4 C's: critical thinking, collaboration, just let me scroll up, communication and creativity. These are important to combat 21st century industry job markets. So that's my belief of the 21st century learning and teaching and where we're going. Next is number 2, discussion and analysis of Australian education context, and especially the general requirements of the Australian and Victorian curriculum. And why is that the Australian to professional teaching standards are implemented and integrated within these Australian and Victorian curriculums? So, as you can see, we have 2 educational frameworks. The Australian educational frameworks, the national framework, it provides the virtue to the future of Australian individuals. It's not just the Australian curriculums, but within Australia and the Victorian curriculum, within the Australian educational context, each curriculum provides the general capabilities and requirements to accommodate all learners. They are expected, the curriculum framework expects that all learners have the foundational knowledge of literacy, as suggested by ACRA 2016. They have the foundational knowledges of literacy, numeracy, information communication technology capability, critical creative thinking, personal and social capability, ethical understanding, and intercultural understanding. Each of these mechanics are expected to be implemented across different disciplinary subjects in the education sector. I argue that within the curriculum frameworks, the ATSL standard is a resourceful tool that outlines an integral part of building future educators such as myself, the responsibilities and the role of their own profession, and what guidelines as to ATSL standard expects from future educators, current educators, and future emerging educators, the component to engage in improving and developing the delivery of teaching much more effectively, as opposed to if we don't have ATSL standards to guide us in the most effective manner possible. So we see that literacy, students are expected or are strengthened to show their demonstration of the mechanics of English, especially through the general aspects of vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation of words by navigating themselves through written text and all literacy areas. ACRA 2016, in conjunction to Merringoo's, different academic literature have suggested that students review and show the capacity to use the logical approaches from the mathematics, the logical understandings, the knowledge and skills, and problem-solving skills, and are expected to show that in different disciplinary subjects when asked to critically think, not just critically think, logically understand and solve different scenario questions that rely on the logical thinking based on what they're being asked. Well, it's not just about literacy and numeracy, but also diverging into the use of ICT as well, the general capability to use personalized computers, that this will strengthen ongoing skills and implement key digital software to the class to implement their own research thinking skills, create projects through apps, through different media projects, through different media platforms to boost their own learning and enhance learning pedagogies and learning experiences in the class. Diverging into critical and creative thinking, students grow natural habits to get out of their comfort zone and really provide their inner thoughts about different dimensions of the thoughts they're thinking about within the content they are studying. But the last three in particular shows important understanding both ethically and interculturally through the personal and social capabilities that students are shown the general aspects of understanding different values and beliefs through different conceptual frameworks within the disciplinary subject they are tackling with, but also understand the distinction between learning languages, cultures, and other different areas within their own academic learning, as they will be exposed to, for example, history. They might be learning about Asian history and Western history. Students are shown as they go through schooling, each step by step, the students are expected to show their own empathy and the responsibility to show respect for diversity in addressing different levels of our cultural implications and creating awareness and respect for what they're learning in class will show their developmental cognitive ability of detail to learn different cultures and pay respects for them. So, engaging best teaching practices within curriculum frameworks is conjoined together with the implementation of ATSL standards. They are aligned with ATSL standards to give us an indicator and the understanding of how does curriculum promote core ethical and cultural values, and what benchmarks do us teachers have to get through to respond to different learning scenarios and boost teaching practices in the most effective way possible to respond towards the following: students learning attributes through understanding linguistic, socioeconomic, religious, and cultural backgrounds, as well as recognizing interactions and building empathy, building different pedagogical frameworks to boost students' learning skills. So we can see that the growing importance and necessary ATSL standards provides, as I said, the necessary brain benchmark and gives us a broad range of strategies to carry out outstanding learning environments. This, conjoined with the Australian and Victorian curriculum, in conjunction with the ATSL standards, is to succeed in a highly competitive global economic structure and build and prepare students to achieve each status of their schooling as they will until they graduate high school and embark on tertiary level education, which then preparing students to work throughout their own lives in the 21st century. So academics and literature have suggested, especially Lucas, have asserted that growing organizations around the world have begun explicitly promoting the need to incorporate skills to achieve key factors, leading action to work in a high quality standard. To achieve this, the ATSL standard strengthens the general requirements to lead students of work of a high quality standard, that teachers plan and implement effective teaching strategies and learning aims within the focus areas that are improving within the teaching programs to lead students complete and prepare for work that meets the high quality standards. So to achieve these improvements, it is imperative that the national education standards that teachers conduct and work with colleagues to review teaching and learning practices and programs, so that, as the academics have suggested, that education systems need to incorporate more knowledge and skills, practical skills, in equipping young people to be competent all-rounders and unlocking potential supporting transitions through schooling to the infinite learning continuum of working life. So, moving on to number 3. So, within my disciplinary subject I've chosen, which is Japanese, how does the general requirements implemented within within the Japanese curriculum frameworks? So, from now on, I'll be focused on Japanese, and I'll be talking about how does Japanese and the general requirements embedded together within Australian curriculum framework explicitly, and also the Victorian curriculum frameworks as well. So, according to the Australian Curriculum Assessment Reporting Authority, I have investigated and analysed the following. So, within literacy, numeracy, information communication technology capability, critical and creative thinking, personal and social capability, ethical understanding, intercultural understanding, each of these areas, Japanese plays a vital part within the curriculum frameworks. We see that in literacy, within Japanese, the general capability is to promote and the ability to communicate and extending different literacy capabilities, repositories through language structure awareness. In Japanese, students are exposed to different language mechanisms, different alphabetical systems, different awareness of grammatical patterns and pronunciations. It is important that students need to recognize the foundational understandings of grammar, vocabulary, and the use of words in a sentence, so that they're able to replicate what they've learned in English and diverge what they have learned into Japanese. Different use of translations, different use of exposure within the grammatical aspects of Japanese will concrete students' understanding of the language acquisitions being taught in Japanese and what they've already been exposed to, which is the general capability of recognizing literacy text, recognizing and understanding the sentence being presented. So in numeracy within Japanese, students learn to solve and being exposed to different number patterns, different mathematical approaches of how would they logically think and critically think when being presented different conceptual frameworks and logical understandings within the Japanese language. We can see that in the Japanese language that we have different number systems. It is important that students recognize the use of words, and not just the words, the use of numbers into context, how they count numbers, and knowing their own place values, and show the differences between the place values that I've learned already, and how would the Japanese language system be applied in their own case. So it's important in order to recognize the place values in Japanese, students need to be able to recognize place values they've learned, they've grown up already as their general capability, and then once they understand fully of the number system, they will be able to understand how would the not the educational frameworks, but the number system frameworks be aligned, and how are they differed from the number system they have learned. Because each number system is different, and therefore in order to translate what the word precisions, the wording positions of the number systems, students need to be able to recognize the place values of each words and each numbers within Japanese language. So therefore, numeracy involves students in recognizing and understanding the role of mathematics in the word, and having dispositions of capacities to use mathematical knowledge and skills purposefully. So students can also conduct research skills and logical skills in mathematics to inform and understand the Japanese culture, where there might be situations where they have to apply the logical approach as to how would they find their own way in a scenario where they get lost, and so how would they use the language structure in logical sense given from what they're taught in mathematics. The idea of thinking outside the box, the idea to think logically step by step how to solve not just the equation, but the equation being presented in a scenario, that how would students approach step by step the procedural order to tackle the situation they're in if they get lost. In Japanese, for example, there might be a scenario question where students are asked to use the grammatical structure to find their own way around Tokyo, and so they might be asked to list the phrases that I've learned and communicate logically to find their way around the prescribed location in Tokyo. So therefore, we see there's this logical thinking being implemented, and there's this critical thinking being implemented throughout Japanese language of discussing the logical aspects of resolving or solving different scenario questions. Numeracy involves students in recognizing and understanding the role of how to think logically, and all the skills that learn in mathematics to learn differential abilities to communicate their own logical understanding through the use of structure, sentence structure, vocabulary, in a broader context within application of capabilities of literacy and numeracy. It's not just literacy and numeracy. Diverging to ICT usage and information communication technology capabilities, students might be asked to implement their own research skills, which is embedded in the explicit curriculum, that the idea that all the lesson plans, all the content knowledge are expected to be taught, not expected to be taught, but are prescribed to be taught in class. Especially, they might be asked to conduct research projects in exploring the Japanese culture by providing a poster of Japanese culture, and how would they communicate their own findings in the Japanese language. They could conduct an oral presentation based on the chosen themes, for example, Japanese pop culture and historical cultures and influences, and what they think of it, what areas did they like and dislike, would they go to Japan, would they take their friend along, their family along, who would they go with. The essential key components of discussing, communicating their own findings with a different language, these research skills, the skills of implementing ICT, the skills of exposure to language structures, and logical thinking through numeracy, literacy, and ICT, we see that this integrated approach of using the basic skills towards Japanese. Which then goes to my next point of developing critical and creative thinking, as students are conducting research skills or writing an essay or writing their own reflections about what they've done the weekend, for example, students are asked to think creatively and use the sentence structures that have been exposed to and the phrases they've learned in class to critically think and apply the knowledge being presented to communicate their own opinions, thoughts in Japanese when writing an essay, or even reading and comprehending skills, or when they're asked to read an extract and reading folk tour, poems, or any other reading comprehensions. The general capability to read, how to read text, how to pronounce the words in the native tongue, not in the native tongue, sorry, in the language they've been studying. These skills provide and inform students an understanding of cross-cultural exchange and the ability to communicate their language and building relationships between Australia and Japan, which goes to ethical understanding, intercultural understanding. The students study and gain perspectives from Japanese perspective and Australian perspectives, which creates a diversified environment where students have respect for and create, which leads to intercultural understanding, where students be able to build cross-cultural relations and promote tolerance, adaptation, the conception of being bilingual and being able to adapt different cultures and languages. All these approaches stem from the general requirements of the Australian curriculum, which emphasize students what should they know, what they're able to do to build and open relationships between Australia and Japan. So we see that the general requirements of the Australian curriculum, as well as the Victorian curriculum, which I'll present a diagram afterwards, are embedded explicitly both within the Australian curriculum and Victorian curriculum. As we see in the Japanese curriculum, that the general requirements are developed in students' reading, focuses on students' reading, writing, speaking, listening skills to gain linguistic and a diverse range of literacy skills, which is part of the general requirement. We could also see general requirements within numeracy skills where students are asked to count numbers within the language, to be able to identify the place values in Japanese and in the Japanese style of place of their own Japanese approach of their own place values. For example, 100 is hyaku, and as they count, there are different pronunciations. 100, hyaku, 200, 300. Byaku is a different pronunciation of 300. So therefore, students need to get understanding of each of the place values as they count through, and how the number differentiates as opposed to what they have learned in numeracy. So we see that literatures have suggested that the general capabilities have the development to boost capacity of students' literacy, and also other aspects, general capabilities, where that reflects the diversity of social, technological, cultural, linguistic, and economic contexts, which forms a part of building economical frameworks, linguistic frameworks, cultural frameworks, technological frameworks in a practical sense to boost students' reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills. So, as stated before, students can be asked to listen, read, review various texts such as folklores, poems, and understand Japanese currency, which is using the numeracy aspects, understand the number systems, understand the culture through use of video clips and television commercials, projecting information, again using ICT, students to conduct their own understanding. They could share reactions and describe aspects such as characters and context based on what they've read or listened to, and they could discuss what they like and dislike, as discussed before in this presentation. Students can also conduct research skills, as stated before, to inform their own understanding of Japanese culture, which broadens their ability to communicate using the sentence structure and vocabulary in a broader context. So you can see the general requirements of the Australian curriculum framework as you can see here, the general requirements in the Victorian framework here is socializing, evaluating, translating, the ability to exchange greetings, introduce and share information within the language. And as you can see that each year goes on, we see that there is a stepping stone that students need to achieve and engage in and be able to build their competency within the Japanese language. So that's the Australian curriculum. And this is the Victorian curriculum, where it shows the similar structure, where socializing, informing, creating and understanding, where again each level as they go to, each sequential they go to, that students are expected to perform different greetings, the ability to introduce themselves within the language, be able to collaborate with peers, participate in everyday conversational activities, classroom activities, and different routines, asking what they write, what they do, what they do in their free time, and informing, gathering information, congruent information in a very broad range of resources to adapt their own learning areas, to complement their own areas, and adapt towards a different culture other than what they've been exposed to already. So, as stated, in academic literatures and from ACRA as well, that students co-create their ideas by intertwining innovative approaches to the application of what's been taught in class and bring relevance to what they are learning through the use of curriculum frameworks and curriculum frameworks of the Australian and the Victorian curriculum. We can see the conventions of informing, creating, translating, reflecting, where informing the new systems of language and how they pronounce words, what's the alphabetical order, how the sentence conjoin and align to create a cohesive sentence within the Japanese context. The creating, again, research skills, creating their own research, creating their own knowledge based on creating sentences based on what they've learned in class. Translating as well, meaning that they are given a sentence in Japanese and be asked to produce that meaning in English and what it means in this sense, and differentiate between different grammatical structures between Japanese and the English language. And finally, reflecting and understanding the role of the culture of the language, building that culture understanding. Again, we see each of these creating, translating, reflecting, and understanding the role of culture of language, informing as well, have relations towards the general capabilities of literacy, information communication technology, where there's general capabilities of boosting ICT usage, and the ICT usage where students are able to conduct research skills with the use of ICT. And as stated before, building critical and creating thinking skills and ethical and intercultural skills. So, and finally, to conclude this presentation, what I have demonstrated through my own understanding of the structures of the sentence, or not sentence structure, the Japanese structure. I have participated and studied the Japanese language, and to demonstrate my own knowledge, the necessary knowledge, and understand the concepts, and the structure of the education strategies and the command area of Japanese. I've been on placements as well, and throughout these experiences of learning and the lesson plans I have created from my previous placements, I have not only studied but also applied what I've studied, the content, knowing my content, apply what I know from the contents I know, and applied to my classroom usages, and recuperated different pedagogical frameworks and different teaching practices to implement and engage learning and teaching of the course of my study in the most effective manner possible. So you can see in my last figure that the enrollments have justified that I have completed Japanese units, Intermediate Japanese A, Advanced Japanese. I've completed Japanese A and Intermediate Japanese A, Intermediate Japanese B, and Advanced Japanese A and B. Here and here. So, in conclusion, what I've just stated before, 21st century gives us a broad range of tools and ideas, and how do we prepare students to compete and combat 21st century learning and job market. but also literatures and academic research suggested that 21st century learning, with the aid of the Australian and Victorian curriculum frameworks, have been explored to give us an idea and understanding how do they conjoin and what links do they embed. We have seen that the general capabilities are the foundational processes that students need to solidify, and once solidified, they are used and applied to different contexts, which builds the stepping stones as they progress throughout their schooling years. And we can see that there is relevance and understanding of the general requirements and necessity for the Australian ATSL standards by informing us and giving future educators and current educators the guidance to improve their own teaching practices in the best way possible. And finally, with the use of my artifacts through the figures I have shown and the curriculum frameworks, then showing the relevance of each other, has demonstrated my cross-linking understanding of the explicit curriculum frameworks into my chosen discipline area, Japanese. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I will conclude here. Thank you.